views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Coming up on this edition of Perspectives, 2018, an extraordinary year. We saw the best of our country, and some could argue we also saw the worst. On this episode, we take a look back at some of the most interesting headlines and make our anticipation for what will continue in 2019. We'll have this discussion on this edition of Perspectives. Stay tuned with yours truly, Daren Jaime.
What's on your mind?
Let 'em know.
What's on your mind? What's on your mind?
Let 'em know. Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference.
What's your perspective?
Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective?
And hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime, and of course, we thank you for watching. You can watch Perspectives every week here on BronxNet's Channel 67. Also, you can check us out via social media, and if you don't have that, you can always check us out on the web at www.bronxnet.org, and we continue to bring you all the news, the information, the things that are making headlines here on Perspectives found on BronxNet Television. Well, it has been a wild 2018 political season, both on a national and local level. So many shakeups, upsets, records broken, history made, and much, much more. Here now to take a look back on 2018 is our political analyst and correspondent. We welcome J.C. Polanco to the show. J.C., good to have you, buddy.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. You're available in so many places, the computer, the TV, streaming. All we need is a blimp to go around the Bronx with open perspective so that everybody has a shot to take a look at what's going on your program.
A lot going on, but I'm glad to have you, man. And
Thanks,
glad to have you sit next to us. We want to talk about this political season. 2018, a real serious political season. I'll start first locally. When we look at the 2018 political season here in the borough of the Bronx, a lot to talk about. Incredible. And nothing will top Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez winning in a Democratic primary against incumbent Joseph Crowley in a move that some people still don't know how it happened.
I don't know how anything happens anymore. I can't believe Nabi and you still have me coming on. I don't know how Trump happened. I don't know how this happened with Ocasio. I'm in disbelief. Truth of the matter is that we had Congressman Joe Crowley representing the Bronx and Queens for 2 decades. Mm-hmm. He got up to be the number 3rd highest ranking Democrat in the entire House of Representatives. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of seniority. That's a lot of campaigning and fundraising all over the country. And because of that, a lot of Congress members that hit leadership tend to spend a lot of time in Washington. And they do so as they move on to leadership. And quite frankly, we were hearing that Congressman Crowley, if the Democrats took over like they did in November, was potentially rumored to be Speaker of the House. Could you imagine having a Speaker of the House from the Bronx and Queens? That would have been amazing. So here comes Ocasio-Cortez out of nowhere. Look, I've been on the scene since I was 18, and I saw this young person come in and win a Democratic primary against a powerhouse like Congressman Crowley. I don't know how it happened. I'm not going to make pretend to know how it happened. What I know is that it happened, and she leapfrogged over a lot of incredible people. In that district she represents, in our side of the Bronx, we have a lot of my friends that I've known for 2 decades that have been representing hundreds of thousands of people like Senator Sepulveda, Assemblyman Crespo, just to name 2, that have been working hard, establishing themselves to show their communities that I can represent you, I can fight for you, I can fight for all the things that you demand from government. And maybe one day I'll have a shot of being a member of Congress. And here comes this person out of nowhere without a record and gets to go now to Congress. The interesting thing is this. And this is where I want Bronxites to be honest. One thing you're going to get from me here as the sole liberal Republican here in the Bronx is honesty. And look, I don't think that it's fair to say that she's been doing the right thing thus far. I think that Congresswoman-elect Ocasio-Cortez is in an incredible position to learn the position, to go to Washington and represent my family. I live in her district, and the 700,000 people or so that she's going to represent. And instead, what she's become is a national phenom celebrity. She's been on more late-night TV shows than J-Lo out of the Bronx. Think about it.
Yeah, at 29, I think a lot of people say, how did this happen?
No, not only that, but my question to you is, she didn't beat Steve King, the racist Republican out in Iowa.
Right.
She beat a liberal Democrat in the Bronx, Queens. So when you really start thinking about what changed here, what changed? You went from a pro-choice congressperson to a pro-choicer. You went from someone that was in favor of Dreamers to someone that went in favor from Dreamers. Politically, what has changed? I'll tell you what's changed. New York is becoming more and more a town where Republicans don't matter as much as Democrats versus socialist Democrats. New York City is seeing an incredible metamorphosis in politics this year, where now the Republican Party in New York City matters less. We've lost a lot of seats. We've lost a lot of clout. We went from 6 senators at one point to just 1 out in Staten Island. We went from 6 members of the city council to 3, 2 in Staten Island, 1 in a small part of Queens. So you're looking at the city politics being more and more between Democrats like Ruben Diaz, Bill Clinton, Andrew Cuomo, and socialist Democrats. Those Democrats represent the very far left wing of the party. Those are the Democrats that are calling the abolishing of ICE, Medicare for all. These are the people that are talking about housing is a right, make sure that there's even a minimum salary that people should get even if they don't work. These are some of the policy positions of socialist Democrats. The battle in New York City politics is going to be between those 2 factions. It's going to be interesting to see how that develops in the future.
Democratic Party clearly divided, obviously, and we can tell even in local elections right here. When you look at the IDC, Jeff Klein, who was longtime, state senator.
Yep.
You got Senator Upstate David Valesky, who both of them ran the IDC. Both of them lose in primary elections as well.
And Jose Peralta,
right?
He's gone. And you have in Brooklyn, we saw another senator lose to an upstart who was a member of the IDC. In Manhattan, Senator Alcantara also lost, who was a member of the IDC. The IDC got wiped out.
So what is the message that's really being sent here when we see, a Klein go down, a Valesky go down? What's the message?
The message
for the
is
Democrat Party?
No. The message this year was very odd. The IDC won under different circumstances. They won under President Obama. They won several times under President Obama. The reason they didn't win this time around, I strongly feel, it was a repudiation from New York against President Trump. And this was clear. Any other Republican president or President Clinton, the IDC would have still stayed in, and you wouldn't have seen the anger in the Democratic Party against those Democrats that saw an allegiance with Republicans because they view the Republicans as evil. They dislike the Republican Party right now because of President Donald Trump. Take, for instance, the election in 2014 for governor. We saw another 1 million New Yorkers come out and vote in New York City, mostly all Democrats, in this year's gubernatorial race. That doesn't happen by mistake. That happens because we have awoken a sleeping giant. Those disinterested Democrats that didn't care about voting in elections, those people that I will come here every election day say, come out and vote, you're embarrassing us with such a low turnout.
Right.
Well, I guess they all heard me because they all came out and voted this time around. And what they did was they repudiated President Trump. They don't like his politics. They don't like his rhetoric. They despise some of his policies. They see what's going on, and that does not ingratiate itself to New York City voters. And what you just saw here in New York City was a powerful senator like Jeff Klein, who really, when you think about Albany, I used to call it Kleinland because he was so powerful.
But he was also powerful in his district. Let's talk about that. I mean, he walked his district. We know that this is a man who spent a lot of time in the district.
You can't tell me this. You cannot tell me objectively, in those Bronx viewers, objectively, you cannot tell me that Jeff Klein lost his seat because Jeff Klein was a bad senator. There's no way. You can't tell me that. You can't tell me he was unethical. You can't tell me anything criminal about this guy. You can't even tell me that he was lazy. You can tell me anything about you. The only reason this man is not in the Senate next year is because Donald Trump is in the White House. And the district finally said, we want nothing to do with anything Republican at all because of Donald Trump. And it's not just New York City. Across New York, the party lost 8 state senators. Right. We lost 3 members of the House of Representatives. And we lost, right here in New York City, the only other state senator that we had in the Republican majority. And now we only have 1 senator left. New York City has turned its back on the Republican Party because the Republican Party is fully in support of Donald Trump. And I think that we're going to pay the price in New York City for a very long time. It's becoming more and more a fight between Democrats and socialist Democrats, with Republicans sitting in the bleachers watching as spectators. And that's because of Donald Trump. Now, I'll tell you this. This is a perfect opportunity. We talk about two-party systems. This is a perfect opportunity for the Republican Party in New York City to rebrand itself and perhaps bring those disenchanted Democrats who don't align themselves with socialist Democrats, bring them into the fold and bring those moderate Democrats like myself back in.
That's a
and
long stretch.
That's a long
That's a
stretch.
long
That's a long
stretch.
stretch. And I don't know if it's going to happen this time around, but the only reason, again, that Senator Klein is not in is because of this. It's because Donald Trump is in the White House and the district doesn't want anything to do with anything Republican. And they view Senator Klein, although he's a Democrat, pro-choice, liberal in almost anything, they view him as having sold out to their principles, and I don't think that's a fair assessment.
All right, coming up after the break, we're going to talk more with JC. This time, we're taking it to the national front. President Donald Trump taking on the national media, particularly CNN, the revoking of Jim Acosta's press pass. Where have we gone with true news, fake news, and the power of the press? That's coming up next here on Perspectives.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made this vacation happen.
Double points with every purchase?
Cleverly merging promotions,
Love it.
cross-referencing travel sites, and booking all your flights with those.
Vouchers. I got us bumped.
They were like, oh. But now they're like, aloha. You aced this vacation. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
And I can't change, even if I try, even if I wanted to. My love, she keeps me warm. 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 She keeps me warm.
We are neighbors and best friends.
I love my sister.
My heart doesn't see race. Love is love.
Our family is no less than any other family.
Love is kind. Love is patient.
And we're back here on Perspectives, continuing our topic of conversation, a wrap-up of 2018, the political roundup. Our guest in the studio, our political analyst, J.C. Polanco, who is breaking it down. I want to go to the national front right now. I started off talking about President Trump and the recent attack on media. Of course, we know that there's this talk about fake news, real news, but we saw it go to a new level when the White House decided to pull Jim Acosta's press pass. Now, Jim Acosta, I've known for years, has always been an A-brand journalist, but yet and still the first time we've ever seen in recent a man's press pass actually revoked simply for asking questions. Where have we evolved in the world of the president, the White House, and the news media?
I think the president has had a very interesting relationship with the press. I argue, as someone who did not support President Trump in any part of the campaign, I argue that the press is responsible for him being in the White House. The press saw him as a ratings magnet for purposes of selling ads, for purposes of getting people to watch their channels, and they covered everything about this man. I remember a scene on CNN, Daren, where you had a presidential candidate in Marco Rubio being interviewed and him being taken off of the screen and had Eric Trump come in and speak because he had something to say. Another time, you had another presidential candidate be put on the side so that we can watch an empty stage while we wait for Donald Trump to show up. The press has benefited a great deal from Donald Trump for ratings purposes. Now, the problem is this. Donald Trump doesn't really appreciate the free press. He doesn't like to be questioned. He doesn't like the position that comes with a journalist cross-examining you, trying to impeach you. Very few people in the public like it. He doesn't like it, but he does something else. He goes on the attack and counterpunches. We don't normally see that. It offends a lot of us to see it. As to your point with Acosta, The word from the White House as to why they revoked his pass in the first place was that he has shoved the assistant to the side. I disagree with that analysis, but that was the analysis as to why they revoked the press. The reality is that Acosta is persona non grata in the White House because he continues to put the president on the witness stand and continues to cross-examine Ms. Sanders every opportunity he has. So I think that's one of the reasons why you're going to see Acosta not being on the good side of this White House. But look, I think that the Time magazine awarding the Person of the Year to journalists is a repudiation of that kind of treatment by the president to the press. It's telling the president, we side with the press. We recognize that journalists put their lives on the line. Journalists are being killed around the world to deliver the news, and we will side with them and make you number 2 on the list.
But this is almost, I mean, it borderlines on censorship. If you really get down to it, it borderlines on censorship. And the president says, listen, I've got Sarah Huckabee Sanders, but I'm not waiting for her. What I will do is every morning I will get to Twitter and I will make my own press statement. This is the first time ever that we've ever saw a sitting president use Twitter to this magnitude to be your, to be your press person. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is the second in line. Twitter is the first.
We know that he's his own chief of staff, his own communications director, and I think that's what people like about him. A lot of us don't like that. I know I despise when he goes on Twitter because I don't know what he's going to say. I mean, so there are a lot of us who don't appreciate it, but I don't think he'll be the last president. I think he's the first to use Twitter in this fashion, but I think we're going to see more presidents along the way come in and talk directly to people through Twitter, not cursing at people or belittling folk, but I think you're going to see Twitter being used more and more by future presidents to directly connect with the American people.
Well, talk to me about 2018 midterm elections. We saw a lot talking about the president. Some of the states that we saw, huge losses. We talked about in the beginning a big blue wave. Kind of election night, it wasn't all the way clear. But by the time the dust settled, you have to admit, the blue wave actually hit.
It was a blue wave. Look, anyone that says it's not a blue wave is out of their minds. We lost the House by 40 members. I mean, 40 people? That's huge. We lost about 350 state legislators around the country. We lost 6 governor's mansions. I mean, this was a very big blue wave, and no bigger blue wave than we saw in New York. In New York, we saw the state Senate change hands, not by 1 or 2 seats, but by 8 seats. We saw 3 members of Congress lose their seats. This was a very, very hard election for Republicans. And this was devastating for moderate Republicans and Republicans that once represented Clinton districts, those districts where Hillary Clinton won as a Democratic presidential candidate, and they also won as Republican members of Congress, one of those weird districts across the country. We had several of them, including out in Pennsylvania. They're gone. And the death of the liberal to moderate Republican was served on election night 2018. I don't know how we come out of this, but I'll tell you this. If the Democrats now focus on extreme policies, those policies pushed by socialist Democrats. Now, before you flip the channel and get mad at me, hear me out. Hear me out.
Okay.
You cannot win the majority of the House of Representatives without red state Democrats. Those are Democrats that represent districts where President Trump won big. You can't get to that majority. You will lose those members if you push an agenda that is so socialist, like the ones that we're hearing from the young upstarts like Congresswoman-elect Ocasio. You're going to lose it if you automatically talk about impeaching the president until the final review comes in from Special Counsel Mueller. You're going to lose those districts in 2020. If the Democrats are smart, this is where they respect and recognize regional differences around the country and give some leeway to those red state Democrats to not support some of the extreme ideas of the Democratic Party. Sort of like how the Republicans should have embraced those liberal and moderate Republicans, because now, because they didn't, they've lost. Carlos Curbelo lost in Florida, a moderate Republican. That seat has gone to the Democrats. Mia Love lost in Utah, moderate Republican. That's gone. And you could keep going down the list.
And they're close races that were right at the head. We paid attention to Andrew Gillum, Stacey Abrams. Those 2 went down. You had Mississippi that came down to the wire. I mean, so when you look at it, you see a lot. Even if the Democrats didn't win, they certainly put up a formidable opponent to the place that they almost were able to take it over.
Absolutely. But you know what's even more interesting about what you just said? The U.S. Senate is solidly looking more and more like a permanent Republican bastion. And it's reflective of the Electoral College, and the House is reflective of the popular vote. If you take a look at the map of election on election night 2018, you're going to see how Republicans lost the total vote tally at the end of the night, but walked away with picking up 2 seats in the Senate. And in the House of Representatives, the Democrats won solidly. When you look at the map, I'm starting to think that states like North Dakota, South Dakota, Indiana, those rural and Midwestern states will solidly stay Republican now as the Republican Party becomes more and more a rural party, and is reflective of the Electoral College. So Democrats, be careful about those red states. Try to win there if you want to ever get the Senate majority, or win the Electoral College in 2020.
I'm going to come back and talk a little bit after the break about the 2020 election, because there is a lot that's still on the table.
Yeah.
Democrats still have yet to field who that person is going to be that's going to run for the president of the United States. We do know this much, that based on what we saw already, things are going to be very heightened, very tight, and very close. And so I'll ask you this before we go to break. How much of what we saw in these midterm elections were simply anti-Trump? And how much was this just Democrats who were able to galvanize their base?
Totally anti-Trump. This was a repudiation of Donald Trump. These Democrats that won, and I'm going to repeat this again, not to offend Senator-elect Biaggi, who I'm sure is going to do a good job. And if you look around the country, Democrats that won this election won against very good Republican members of the House who worked their districts hard, who were free from scandal, but lost because they had an R next to their name, not because they were ineffective. And that R is a reminder that they are of the party of Trump. And that's why you saw such major Democratic blowups. No other reason. Now, you have to take a look at district by district. In the Bronx, in New York, and throughout the country, Democrats won this election in 2018 solely because of Donald Trump.
All right, let's take a quick break, come back. As we move to 2020, what are the predictions? Who will emerge amongst the Republican Party as a candidate for President of the United States, as well as on the Democratic side? Will we see the same amount of intense voter turnout? Will it turn out? Well, JC will give us predictions. We predicted this stuff about 4 years ago, hence to let you know, and we were way off.
Polanco Damas.
We're going to give it another shot in just a few minutes. Stay with us right here on Perspectives. Back here with JC Polanco, continuing our conversation, talking about upcoming things in 2020. As we look to 2020, what are some of the names that we're hearing for possibly candidates for President of the United States?
I think the Democrats are getting desperate. You're going to have the same problem the Republicans had in 2016. You're going to have 20 candidates running for president, 2 tiers of debates. Everybody's going to lose their minds. There's going to be zero focus, and you may have someone unelectable come out of there to run against Donald Trump. The reality is you have some few heavy hitters that should be considered. And it's not people like O'Rourke in Texas or Gillum in Florida. They're very smart people, but they're not comparable to President Barack Obama. Barack Obama won his election and then ran for president. These two lost their elections and are being rumored to talk to president because they're different, because they could raise money, because they could give good speeches. That's not good enough. And it won't be enough to beat Donald Trump in 2020. Biden, I think Biden is the strongest candidate the Democrats have. Going into this race, no question about it. I think you have combinations of Biden with someone else. In order for the Democrats to win this election in 2020, they need to win those red states. If you take a look at the map, the only way to win the Electoral College, the 270 votes that you need, it's not winning New York and California. You're walking in with that. How do you get Indiana? Can you get Indiana? Can you get Ohio?
Tolerate me. This
Can
is
you
okay.
get Wisconsin? Can you get Pennsylvania back? Can you get Michigan? That's the question. You can't do that with some ultra-liberal candidate.
Who's the person that does it?
Clinton? No, Clinton can't do it ever again. I think you're going to have Joe Biden run a very good race, and I think that he should be the candidate running. I know he's going to be an octogenarian, and people are going to be concerned about that. But if you're looking at young candidates running for president, you got to think about Cory Booker out of New Jersey. He fits the profile of a president, has that pedigree, attorney with great background, U.S. senator. They're going to obviously see everything about him and see what he's done in his past. But after Donald Trump in 2016, I don't know who's unelectable anymore.
Right, and let's talk a little bit about that. You've got one other person that Elizabeth Warren, I'm sorry.
Elizabeth Warren, she represents the very far left wing of the party, and that's my concern. if the party runs a left-winger like Warren, there's no way that you're going to win those red states. It's just impossible.
Republican side, who do we see?
Republican side are going to support Donald Trump unless he's not in office anymore, and then they're going to rally behind Pence. You know this. I mean, the party's solidly behind President Trump. Last poll had him at over 80% support. So I don't, barring him deciding not to run, he's going to be the candidate going in. I hope to see a primary on my side of the party. I like to see Kasich get in there. I like to see a Jeff Flake get in there, talk about moderate Republican positions, and maybe get some excitement going in, talking about how we can reform immigration and reform criminal justice and do a lot of other things that some parts of the party are talking about.
A lot of damage has been done by this president, particularly in communities of color, by his remarks.
They'd argue that the numbers in employment are great.
We're talking reality.
That's what they're arguing.
We're talking reality.
Perception.
Right, perception. Right. So let's talk about reality. Reality is communities of color are not going that way.
I agree.
What's gonna happen? How far of a setback is this for the Republican Party?
For New York City Republicans, is devastating. Not around the country, but for New York City, Philadelphia, the urban centers has been devastating. But it's going to be very good news for Bronx voters. Bronx voters should know that going into 2020, if you care about power in the Bronx, not only do you have the Speaker of the Assembly that comes out of the Bronx, we know that. Mm-hmm. We have Senator Bailey, who is also out of the Speaker's district, who has been named chairman of the Codes Committee in Albany. That's huge, especially with criminal justice issues coming down the pike. So the Bronx is going to have a lot more weight going into this year coming up in the state Senate, in the Assembly. And looking forward to 2021, this is the year where I believe Ruben Diaz Jr., our borough president, begins to prepare himself for a citywide run for mayor. He begins to show the city what he's done in the Bronx, cultivating investment, bringing new people into the borough, and he's going to be able to sell his story. I think 2019, you're going to see a lot of that happening. By 2019, we're going to start seeing who the contenders are for the big title of mayor of New York City. Could we have the first Hispanic mayor of New York City finally? Maybe. But keep your eyes open on the borough president this year.
Gave you a lot of meat. Stay tuned. Got a lot to talk about. JC, thank you, my brother.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Hey, listen, I want to thank you for watching here on Perspectives. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and we're not out of show because you can always look at a past episode. But if you want to catch this and future episodes, be sure to tune in BronxNet Channel 67, Verizon Files Channel 33, and BronxNet.org on the web. For all of us here on the Set of Perspectives, I'm Daren Jaime saying take care. Share your perspective with somebody else you just don't know. It just might make a difference in somebody else's life. Take care.
Because it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference. What's your perspective? Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let them know.
What's on your mind?
Let them know.
Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Let them know. Anything relevant to life, you bring it to. Behold, the angry giant. Behold, the angry giant. Behold, the angry giant. Behold, the angry giant.
It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies.
Selfie, nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's put a ride home.